He said it was for the team's sake, but for Brazil, those words sounded a lot more like a warning. Because while the rest of the world is watching goals, tactics, and score lines, Brazil is staring at something much more uncomfortable. They're staring at an empty shirt. Number 10. Hanging there. Waiting. Neymar has officially withdrawn from another World Cup match, Brazil's second group stage game against Haiti, and suddenly a question that nobody inside Brazil wanted to ask is getting louder and louder. What if Neymar never actually plays in this tournament? Think about how strange this situation is. We're talking about Brazil. 5 World Cups. Endless talent. A nation that treats football like breathing. And yet one of the biggest stories around the team isn't happening on the field at all. It's happening in treatment rooms. Because Neymar hasn't played a competitive minute since May 17th. Not one. Brazil already went into the opening match against Morocco without him and came away with a draw that felt uncomfortable. Not disastrous, not catastrophic, but uncomfortable. Because Brazil didn't look like Brazil, something looked missing. Something felt missing. And now Neymar is out again. Officially, the Brazilian Football Confederation says this is all part of an optimized recovery process for a grade 2 calf injury. Optimized. Interesting word. Because when people hear optimized, they picture control, precision, a careful plan. But fans started asking a different question. If everything is optimized, then why does this feel like improvisation? Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Carlo Ancelotti made one of the biggest decisions of the entire tournament before the World Cup even started. He selected Neymar in the 26-man squad knowing exactly what he was dealing with. He knew the injury history, he knew the risks, he knew Neymar was approaching 34 years old. He knew Neymar's body had already spent years fighting battles that cameras never show. And here's where things become uncomfortable. Because Ancelotti didn't just bring Neymar, he chose Neymar over fully fit alternatives, players who could run immediately, players who could contribute immediately, players like João Pedro. So now people are asking something that becomes more dangerous every day Neymar remains unavailable. Did Brazil take a football player, or did they take an idea? Because that's what Neymar represents now, not just goals, not just assists, something much bigger. Experience, leadership, belief, emotion. Ancelotti seemed to make a decision that went beyond tactics, almost as if he was saying, even if Neymar isn't on the field, Neymar matters. But World Cups are ruthless places. Emotion doesn't press defenders, symbolism doesn't score goals, and empty roster spots become very visible when tournaments get serious, especially if things start going wrong. Because here's the hidden issue underneath all of this. This calf injury isn't the real story. The calf injury is just the latest chapter. The real story started years ago. Go back through Neymar's career and the list starts becoming disturbing. Metatarsal fractures, ankle ligament damage, groin issues, repeated setbacks, repeated recoveries. Repeated moments where people said, he'll come back stronger. And then came the massive one, the ACL rupture, the meniscus damage. The injury that looked less like a setback and more like a collision with reality. 15 months. 15 months fighting to get back. 15 months of rehabilitation. 15 months of uncertainty. And Neymar himself has spoken openly about moments where he wanted to stop, wanted to give up. Think about that for a second. Because fans usually see athletes on match days, stadium lights, celebrations, highlights. But rehabilitation is different. It's quiet, it's repetitive, it's lonely. And for Neymar, that process became his life, day after day, week after week, month after month, just trying to get his own body to cooperate. Then football delivered something that almost feels cruel. One day after Neymar was named in Brazil's World Cup squad, he suffered this latest calf injury. One day. The timing almost felt impossible, and suddenly excitement became panic. Because instead of preparing Neymar for matches, Brazil started preparing for possibilities. Maybe he'll be ready later. Maybe he'll return for knockouts. Maybe he'll recover in time. Maybe. And World Cups don't usually reward maybe. Fans noticed it immediately. The conversation online changed. At first, people were supportive, then worried, then confused, and eventually another question started appearing. Is Brazil protecting Neymar, or is Brazil protecting the decision to bring Neymar? Because those are not the same thing. Official responses haven't really calmed anyone down. If anything, they've created more questions. Every update feels careful. Every statement feels measured. Recovery is progressing. Things are positive. He's improving. But nobody seems willing to answer the question people actually care about. When does he play? Not eventually, not hopefully. When? Because every day that passes shrinks the margin for error, and pressure doesn't stay in one place, it spreads. Suddenly, younger players start feeling it. Suddenly, coaches feel it. Suddenly, every performance gets viewed through a Neymar lens. Brazil wins? People ask when Neymar returns. Brazil struggles. People ask when Neymar returns. Brazil creates chances but looks disconnected. People ask when Neymar returns. His absence starts becoming bigger than the games themselves, and that's dangerous, because football teams can accidentally become dependent on people who aren't even playing. The emotional vacuum starts changing everything. Press conferences feel different, training feels different, conversations feel different. Everyone starts speaking around the same invisible topic: Neymar, Neymar, Neymar. And the strangest part is that Brazil is still filled with talent, world-class talent, players that many countries would dream of having. So this shouldn't happen. Brazil shouldn't feel incomplete, and yet somehow it does, which creates an even more uncomfortable question. Have Brazil spent years building around Neymar so completely that even his absence changes the team's identity? Because if that's true, this isn't a short-term problem. This becomes a structural problem. Now, to be fair, there is another side to this. Supporters of Ancelotti's decision say legends are different. They say Neymar's influence goes beyond minutes played. They say young players become calmer around him. They say his presence changes dressing rooms, changes confidence, changes belief. And maybe they're right. Maybe if Neymar walks onto the field during the knockout rounds, even at 80% fitness, everything changes. Maybe one moment changes the entire tournament. Maybe one pass, one free kick, one flash of genius. After all, we've seen football do impossible things before. But that's also where the controversy refuses to disappear, because hope and strategy aren't the same thing, and right now Brazil appears to be running something very unusual, a hope-based system. Survive the group stage, buy time, wait for Neymar, hope for Neymar, trust Neymar. And if it works, Ancelotti looks like a genius. But if it doesn't, if Brazil reaches the later stages and Neymar still isn't ready, people will go back to the beginning, back to that roster decision, back to that gamble, back to the question that nobody wanted to ask. Was this avoidable? Because this isn't just about matches anymore, it's about legacy. Neymar already surpassed Pelé as Brazil's all-time leading scorer. Think about how absurd that sounds. He climbed above one of football's greatest names. And yet there is still one thing missing. One thing: the World Cup. The thing that transforms careers into mythology. The thing that changes how history remembers people. And that's why this feels bigger than an injury update, because everyone senses what this really might be. The final chapter, the final World Cup, the final attempt. Not Neymar against defenders, Neymar against time, Neymar against his own body, Neymar against years of damage that never fully disappear. And right now, Brazil's entire tournament is living under a single question: not whether Neymar returns, not whether Neymar can play, whether the player who returns is still Neymar. Because if number 10 finally comes out of that locker, the whole world won't just be watching a football match, they'll be watching an answer.